Hey everybody, welcome to episode 21 of What Not to Miss with Chris. My goal is to put out quick, relevant content that explains the why behind the what in order to positively impact the freight community. Now on today's episode, we're going to go over 3 things that will help prevent you from getting dropped by your carriers. Now this topic is especially relevant as FedEx recently made headlines for dropping or reducing certain services for 1,400 of its customers. While it is not a new concept for carriers to drop customers, the short notice provided and sheer volume of customers they let go at once was alarming to many. So alarming that I chose to dedicate this episode to ways shippers may be able to avoid getting dropped by their valued carriers. Now I understand that all shippers may not have the ability to implement some of these thoughts. However, understanding a carrier's mindset in a tight market will only benefit your ability to secure capacity and not get dropped. Okay, so number 1, really get to know your customers and suppliers. How well do you honestly know how your customers and vendors' supply chain functions? Spend some time having in-depth conversations with your vendors and customers regarding their process. From maritime to LTL, all modes are and will continue to experience capacity restraints for the remainder of the year. And freight markets are always more vulnerable to volatility when supply and demand are in balance. For example, just this year, the Ever Given blockage in the Suez, ice storms in Texas, and the Colonial Pipeline hack had amplified effects on our supply chain due to the extreme supply and demand imbalances we've experienced over the past year. This has caused a lot of carrier displacement, which has thrown off routing guides and forced many shippers to reach outside of their regular networks, ultimately leading to inflated transportation costs and service failures. So by having an in-depth understanding of how volatility impacts your suppliers and customers' ability to meet expectations, you'll be able to keep your carriers better informed and dedicated to your freight. All right, so number 2, establish expectations. It is just as important for carriers to understand what's expected of them as it is for shippers to know what their carriers' expectations are. At some point, mistakes on both sides will occur. As a shipper, if you have clear understanding of what is important to your carriers and why, then you can put forth preventative measures that, if not in place, could lead to unnecessary waste of time and tarnished reputation. It is never too late to establish or adjust expectations. So if you have not already have a clearly defined and written expectation from your carriers, I would advise that this task becomes a priority in the near future. All right, number 3, listen. While this may seem easy and like common sense, I think it's safe to say that with everything in life, it can become challenging in all the hustle and bustle to set time aside to ask questions and ultimately listen. Drivers are constantly battling inclement weather conditions, traffic flow safety, changing regulations, limited overnight parking, as well as a mountain of other concerns. So understanding how these issues and others affect their day-to-day can empower you to make standard operating procedures or policy adjustments, or at very least sympathize with them. If possible, make yourself available to have conversations with drivers regarding market conditions and have a trusted advisor you can lean on to help educate you on relevant industry-specific matters. Drivers and carriers feel respected and valued when they feel heard, and having these conversations will only help keep you informed. This alone will help build long-lasting, mutual beneficial relationships that will promote loyalty despite market trends. So to recap, 3 preventative measures you can take to avoid getting dropped by your valued carriers are really getting to know your customers and suppliers, establishing expectations, and listening. Now, if you'd like to go into these topics in more detail, as always, please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or find us at bridgelogisticsinc.com. And until next time, I'm Chris Eads, and thanks for joining me on another episode of What Not to Miss with Chris.